I tried to pick a word that how I felt outside of anger on Monday night about being blindsided by this. We were going to a meeting to discuss two items at the special general committee meeting. One was PDI, which was the 1.1 million that we were in the ditch for legal fees. And the other one was, I think there was 6 studies to be done about the Parkway. So coming out of that, the mayor reads this scripted report that he had had a meeting with the CEO of Ontario Hydro and that the talks were back on again. So for me, disappointment. I'm disappointed for the 4 council mates and myself that weren't told anything about this. I'm disappointed for the 94% of the people that participated in a poll that said they didn't want to sell PDI. I'm disappointed for John Stevenson, the CEO, who came out yesterday in a communique to his employees that said, I knew nothing about this, knew nothing about the sale. I'm disappointed for the citizens of Peterborough that we have to continue to feed somebody's ego to make sure that their political ends are met. And certainly, we're now probably, the number that I'm hearing is over $2 million in legal fees and all this stuff, and growing every day because you now brought this back on. So I'm sorry.
Whose political career do you think this is helping?
Well, certainly, if you look at what the mayor's agenda was, I mean, PDI, Parkway, annexation, or the amalgamation of the land that we were going to do with Cavan North Mining, and all of these things.
So
these haven't come to fruition.
They're all wildly unpopular.
So yeah, absolutely.
But
so
Keith, I'm a little confused too. So you're saying that you think Darrell Bennett convinced Hydro One to start this up again? Is that that's what I get from what you just said there?
Well, to build the Parkway, and the other night, you have to have money. So there'll be 2 streams of money coming in. If he was to sell PDI, he's got $50 million that's going to be invested and going to give a return on income. You're going to have the casino money, so you have a pool of money to do that. And on Monday night, they had 6 studies that they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So what they are hoping to do is go to, if the government changes and the Ford government comes in, to go to them and say, look, the city is hamstrung, we have to do an IEA. We have got council convinced to do these 6 studies surrounding around Jackson Park and all the rest of it, and the Parkway. Would that facilitate you loosening your hold and asking for a complete IEA? And then, guess what? The Parkway is back on again. Mm-hmm. So, and he's hoping probably that there will be a change in some councillors on council, that he has a favorable amount of people that will feed into his agenda. So I'm sorry, I have a problem with that.
Or they're voting because they believe that that's the right thing to do, as opposed, I don't believe that people in council are voting because Darrell Bennett is telling them how to vote.
Well, that's your opinion.
Yeah, but I don't believe that you're voting because Dean Pappas is telling you how to vote, which I don't think is true. I think you're voting because you feel strongly about the things. And
well, I'm against privatization, but also of Ontario Hydro. But also, I have to listen to the electorate. I don't belong to. There isn't a politically party saying to me that are liberal, conservative, or NDP. You have to follow the party lines. The people that elected me are the ones that tell me how they feel about items and stuff like this.
So you would listen to the public rather than John Stevenson? Is that what you're telling me? In terms of PDI?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But Keith, PDI has a board. It's got people that are chosen to be experts, and you've got some really good people on that board from what I can see. You do have the mayor and Dan McWilliams on the board. They're the ones that have been negotiating this, and it seems like the communications haven't been good, and some people are against privatization, and there's good arguments for that, and they've made arguments against it as well. But when things fell apart and it looked like it was not a done deal, we were going to be out $2 million for something that had been promised for years, and now it seems to be back on. But how much do you know? Is there a pipeline from that board that can inform you what's happening?
I mean, I got a communique 3 weeks ago from the former chairman of the board that wasn't reattached to the board again. He only had 1 term. That's David Clark, who was the CFO of PUS. He was the CEO of Viridian, well respected in the electrical industry, and he said in his communique to me and several others that he wasn't in favor of selling PDI. Mm-hmm. So there is the guy.
And he had been on the PDI board?
He was the chairman of the board.
But he also worked for Viridian?
This is his previous. I mean, he was the CFO of PUS. Yeah. He was the CFO of Viridian. So his whole thing has been in the financial end of the electrical industry of his whole career. And he is saying to me, and he sent a communique to all of us, that he was not in favor of selling PDI. That is the chairman of the board. He was not reattached to the board after one term, which is highly, you don't see this happening
He
ever.
wasn't reappointed,
No, he was not
but
reappointed.
he wanted to be appointed.
Yes.
Oh.
And I hear that there was a couple of others that were not reappointed.
I,
There you go.
I wasn't aware there was that kind of turnover on the
Conspiracy.
PUI board, but maybe there was. I guess, so I'm intrigued. You think that Hydro One came back to the table on this because why?
No, Daryl went and approached them
Okay,
about,
so you
So,
think-
so the understanding is
reattaching.
that Darryl went to them to find out why it happened. That's how I understand the door
Well, I
opened.
mean, that's what he's saying, but he's
Yeah.
gone there to get the bargaining back on the table about the sale of PDI. Not about, well, and I would have no problem, but he never came to council and said, look, this is what I would like to do.
Right.
We knew not, there was 5 of us that knew absolutely nothing about this.
But are there not 11 or 10 of people didn't know? One person knew, was the
Well,
mayor.
there's only 5.
How do you know that the
There's
other
only
councillors
5
didn't?
people that asked questions, and they were the 5 people that were against the sale of PDI. The other ones never asked one question that night. So I'm assuming
You're assuming.
that they
Yeah.
knew,
But you
and
know,
we didn't.
okay,
Because
that was-
why wouldn't they ask the same questions that I'm doing?
Because you were asking them, so why would
Well,
two people ask the same question?
Well, they've got mouths and they're councillors and they
But,
have to
you know,
represent
I
the
know, but if
people.
you ask the question, why would they ask the question right after you? It'd be like bad
They-
delegations. we
Yeah,
see
but
at
there was all
council.
kinds of questions to ask.
Okay.
And they didn't. They didn't ask one
And
question.
they were
Okay.
happy to see it go back on, presumably. People who like what's happening are less likely to ask questions. I think that's,
Well, you can,
but you do think that they were told by the mayor and you weren't?
that's right.
And that's just, as you say, speculation.
That's right, and
but that's what you
what's,
believe.
that's what's been happening sort of the 7 years that I've been on council with
Right.
this mayor.
Okay, but you've got your own little group that talks to each other as well. So I think it's very interesting that you're criticizing a group of councillors talking to each other when clearly there's a group of you on the other
Well,
side
I
that
mean,
talk to each other
the
as
mayor is
well.
only one vote, and he can have his agenda for
Dean Pappas is only one vote.
for the city, but he's the only one vote.
Yeah.
We all have our dreams for the city of Peterborough. I have my dreams for the
Yeah, but
city
you
of
and Gary
Peterborough.
Golden work closely together.
Yeah, and we're the Ashburnham Ward,
Yeah.
but we're also councillors for the city of Peterborough. We want the best for the city of Peterborough.
Yep.
So,
But Keith, I gotta.
But all
you know,
councillors vote the
commu-
best for the city of Peterborough in their view.
well, yeah, but
Communications aside, you know, and there's argument that there could be better internal communications, looking at it from the outside, but the deal's off the table. The leader of council decides to take some action to get things back on, and people that were against the sale probably were happy that it was off, you know, negotiations had stalled. Can you criticize the mayor for wanting to get something back on and taking that action independently? I mean, is that something, does the mayor need to come back to all 10 councillors and say, hey, I'm going to see if I can go meet the Hydro
The
One
sense was that it
CEO?
was close.
Well,
That the conversation was
can you-
over.
regardless if I'm for or against, I happen to be elected as a city councillor. And certainly, he didn't avail himself to come and say, this is what I'm planning on doing. Whether he went and then he could do that, but we were
Yeah.
not. When I sat there on Monday night, that's the first I heard, and he had a scripted of what was happening. Well, I'm sorry, why wasn't I informed before that, or whatever? I'm
That was
going by
that
an
was in-
agenda
that was
item
in
that I have.
Public council, it wasn't, you didn't have a private meeting ahead of
No.
time because?
Well, no, and the report that came out was, like you said, was about something completely different.
Yes. But it was all written, it was all typed out. Why weren't we given this?
Why
We
wasn't
asked
John
him-
Stevens told about
Well,
it either?
Well,
So-
I'm going by the communique that he's got to have it right here, so.
I guess to Jay's point partly, and also when this happened originally with Hydro One saying deals off, I wrote an editorial, as we all, that's what we do, and said, you know, it's off for now, but this is a negotiation. I can think of any number of contracts in the past where one party walks away, but they're walking away strategically, and I didn't know that was the case, but I also said,
You're an insider.
it doesn't
Zero beta
mean
told you.
that this is over.
I'm just teasing you.
Because it can, you know, negotiations can always restart. And that's what happened. Personally, I think it's a good thing that, you know, I disagree with you on whether it's a good thing to sell PDI or not. But I get, as Jay said, I don't see that the mayor, if he's believes something should happen, and do we know for certain that he went to Hydro One and convinced them to restart this, or is that again speculation?
We were told that he went, and in his communique that he met with the head of
Right,
Hydro
Hydro
One,
One.
and they had conversations.
Right. So,
Part
but-
of it was probably, I imagine in the conversations, which he should have, or somebody should have been, of trying to recoup the money that we've spent on the legal part of it. I have no problem with that.
Right.
The other one's trying to restart this here thing. That there's a decision for council, not for him.
But we don't know whether Hydro One said to Darrell Bennett, we want to restart this. Yeah, okay, we don't know that one way or the other, because that may be
What I
happened.
was told and things, why this went into the ditch is they wanted to pay less for Hydro One than what was offered in the first place. I'm told that some of the facilities that have a high problem, that there's some of the transmission or the stations they have that have PCBs in it, they didn't want to touch that. So therefore, the city would have been liable to clean that up. They didn't want to touch any of that. These are just things that I'm being told.
And this is speculation.
Of some of the things, of some of the reasons why this kind of went in the ditch.
Right.
But I also think too, that you have a private company now that answers the shareholders. And they probably looked at this, is this a viable business for us to be in? Is the return on our investment going to be there? They've just spent
Yeah,
$6
just viable
billion
questions.
in Washington State buying that. So they looked at this and they went to Arroyo Hydro and probably said, no, we're not going to get our return on investment here. And also they looked at Peterborough and said, we're not going to get the return that we wanted here, so we're not going to do this type of thing. I'm just speculating that that's what happened in
But now
Toronto.
they are doing, I think they've somehow, I just don't see that Hydro One is going to now start again to talk about buying PDI in Peterborough because the mayor said, hey, I'd really like you to do this. I think they must think that there's, for some reason, it's a deal that they want, and maybe they're going to go harder on some terms. We'll see how that turns out.
It's awful funny in this communique that the CEO of PDI didn't even know about this was transpiring.
Yeah, and we can't-
And
we
he
have
is
to
the
be able to reach him. It's
CEO
frustrating.
of the company that's talking to the employees that have a vested interest here, that some of them could be losing their jobs or whatever's going to happen to them.
No one's going to lose their job.
Yes, they are. They're only guaranteed for 1 year. And if you're offered a job in the communications
Yeah.
department at PDI right now,
Yeah.
and the center is in Markham, Ontario, and say your job now, after 1 year, is in Markham, Ontario, you have a decision to make.
You're
Do you want-
speculating again.
No, I'm not. I'm talking to the people that are on the floor. That's just what they've been told. The only one that I could think that would have a safe job is linemen, because they're a high commodity. They know the area. The rest of the people, I think, are in peril of their jobs. There's no communication center that I'm hearing about. We had some land and technology job. They walked away from it. So, I mean, where's this communication center going to be built now?
But
Haven't heard anything about that.
I heard it was like a hub for equipment and things, and there'd be jobs there, and they were going to put it in the major Bennett Park. But I also read in one of your papers that the terms were remaining the same. Is
They
that
will remain
correct?
the same.
The terms are
So
the same.
you're reading the end of the year that someone's going to lose their job, but no one knows that.
Well, they're saying that part of the deal was they were going to increase the employment level to 70 people or something like this here. I don't see that when you have the communication hub is in Markham, when you have all of these other entities are somewhere else. Why would you duplicate it somewhere else? Somewhere along the line is going to be offered a job, and if they say, I'm not going to Markham. And by the way, a linesman could say, we need linesmen, but we need them in Bancroft, Ontario. Is that person from Peterborough going to go to Bancroft, Ontario? When they have a 5-minute
scuttle the
commute?
deal so that a handful of people or a couple of dozen people don't lose their jobs. That's interesting. I just don't know. That's one of the things you have to weigh in the big picture, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, when this comes back out and everything was off the table, there was a comfort level down there. Now it's all heightened again.
Yeah.
That what is going to happen with the sale? What's going to happen to me? Do I have a job? Do I have this here? So another uncertainty for 2 years for these people that are working
Which
down
is
there.
exactly the same that's been happening in the newspaper business for
absolutely.
years.
Other businesses.
And it's pretty
Absolutely.
difficult in the world today when everything, we just talk about the 2 hospitals, and we'll maybe talk about that later. I'm sure there are all kinds of people at Ross Memorial saying, oh, what's this going to mean? Yeah, and
Sure.
efficiencies technology allows for efficiencies, and unfortunately, sometimes that means jobs go away, and that is simple reality. And you can't keep all those jobs when they're no longer necessary, and jack up hydro rates, electricity rates, which is what you would have to do to cover those costs.
And we had a communique that in November of 2017, the PDI made an application to increase the kilowatt rate by 53 cents. So part of the deal was that they would freeze the rates for 5 years. So what happened if after that rate increase went in, Then all of a sudden the sale went through. This is a boon for Ontario Hydro. They've now got 53 cents more on a kilowatt hour than they had before for 5 years, locked in for 5 years. So where's the savings to the people? This is the kind of communication that's given to me. So I'm sorry, I just, it's a difficult
There's a lot of
pill.
moving parts, clearly.
But I mean, one of the other things that even the price, if I was to say that I'm in favor of the price was all wrong. That price should have been $150 million because all they were paying, $105 million, were for the chattels of the company. What about the 42,000 customers you have? They didn't pay 1 red cent. If I own an insurance business and I'm selling my business, I will only get so much for a chair and a table. What I'm selling is my book that has all my customers. So 42 customers, they never put a price on, even if they put $1,000 a customer on the 42,000,
That's a high
that's
pay rate.
$40,000.
That's a lot of money for client acquisition.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's one of the things that I looked at. They never even asked
I
for
don't know a
that.
business that pays $1,000 for a
Well,
client.
well, right off day one, you're making money right off these people, right day
Unless
one.
we have solar power, wind power, or some other sort of power, we're kind of locked into Hydro One or
And if you look
whomever
at
else is out there.
what happened, at least half a dozen other communities that have sold either to Hydro One or to somebody else, the price that they're offering here is commensurate with what's been done. Aurelia, Sault Ste. Marie, that was kind of an odd one. I don't know the details of that. I think there was more money involved, about the same net amount because of debt, but it must be a big regional thing because they have like 220,000 customers. So that must be Sault Ste. Marie and a huge region around it or something. But
Another convincing thing for me, I mean, they say history doesn't repeat themselves. So if you look at what happened in Great Britain when they privatized electric things, the rates went right through the roof. The companies in England are owned by a Spanish and Italian consortium.
Is it 100%?
They're not even owned by the people
Is
that.
it 100% private?
And I can't say
And I'm
that for
trying to
sure,
think- I'm trying to think of it myself,
but I'm
yeah.
just saying the electricity rates went right through the roof. And so why would you bring the same misery over here? It didn't work there.
'Cause
They're
the
trying
terms
to
are
go back to their old way of what they were doing. But here we are saying, oh, we're going to make it different. We're going to change the diametrics of what we're doing here, and it's going to work better here.
But
It didn't
that's
work
just for
there, so
distribution.
why would it work here?
Was that just for the distribution or is that for the entire utility?
I think it was the whole utility, well,
Then it's not the same thing.
yeah.
You
Yeah, it
can't-
was the whole utility.
Yeah, so
different,
I
but-
mean, here
Yeah.
it's just, it is a piece, so.
Yeah, but you know,
Yeah.
it's, Keith, it's interesting, because if anything, if the project had just gone along and it happened, and then we started inquiring a couple of months ago, and then, we found out, didn't find out very much at all. But what's happened, if anything, it's brought the whole debate up,
It
and
has.
folks on your side of the issue are sort of reliving what you did 3 and 2 1 year ago. So